Good to see you, everyone. My name is Robby Howell, and welcome to my new office. We are talking about the new campaign-focused Age of Empires 2 DLC that's coming up. I have a lot of thoughts and guesses as to what it will hold. I'm sure you have plenty as well. So let's just dive right into it. We're talking about campaign DLC predictions, as well as a little bit of editorializing from yours truly. Objective, as always. So, in this video, I'm going to be briefly going over what campaigns I think are most likely to get in my opinion, as well as which campaigns should get in my opinion, to some degree. My objective opinion, that is. So let's jump right into it, but before anything else, this video is sponsored by my game, Enclave. Yes, my tabletop role-playing game, Enclave, that you may remember I launched a Kickstarter for last August and September. My YouTube channel focused just on Enclave, as well as the Enclave Discord server, can both be found in the description down below. We'd love to see you. It's a game I care an awful lot about, and if you ever wonder why I can get off saying that I am a game designer when I'm making these Age of Empires videos, well, that's why. So if you want to see how disastrous my design is for another game, go take a look at that one. Let me take out these earphones. Okay, let's get into my campaign guesses, starting first and foremost with who I think is the most likely candidate for a campaign in this DLC, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. If you don't know, this is the fellow who first unified Japan. He is the winner of the Sengoku Jidai, so to speak. And since we don't have a Japanese campaign yet, I think he is the perfect candidate. Why do I say so? Well, first of all, there's a lot of speculation that this DLC will be East Asian focused, and the Japanese are a prime candidate for getting a proper campaign. Among the Japanese candidates that exist, I think that Toyotomi is the best choice by far. First of all, in my objectively correct opinion, he is the most important man in Japanese history prior to 1600. He was the unifier. He made some of the greatest inroads into the continent. Very important, very successful, very interesting. Second of all, he is the only Japanese candidate who could believably feature all of our core East Asian civilizations, Koreans, Chinese, and Mongols, with minimal logical jumps. Yeah, you have to have a little bit of a logical jump for the Mongols, but that's not even too hard because you could have them representing the Manchurians. There is not a single other Japanese historical figure who covers that much ground, and because of that alone, I think that Hideyoshi is a fantastic pick. Also, he is already adjacently featured in the game in the form of the Admiral Yi historical battle. And while you could say, oh, well, that means he doesn't need to be featured twice, we have seen plenty of times a character who is adjacently featured in an existing scenario get their own full campaign down the road. So in my eyes, that makes him more likely. Plus, I don't think he is explicitly named except maybe in the intro narration for that campaign. So it's not like he's had his day in the sun already. And so that's Hideyoshi. I would say that he is the only one of these picks that I would gladly put money on being in this upcoming DLC scenario. Though maybe not that much money. But he's not the only one I would like to make a prediction for. The next being Zheng He. Do you know who he is? Well, you should. He is a jet-setting Chinese admiral who went as far afield as the Swahili coast. Go take a look at my video on the Swahilis if you haven't seen that yet. And I have a number of reasons for guessing Zheng He as a Chinese campaign that I think are reasonably compelling. So first of all, I think it's pretty safe to assume that we're going to get a Chinese campaign. I think it's even more likely than a Japanese or a Korean one. However, there are many Chinese campaign protagonists whose campaigns should really feature civilizations that aren't yet in the game. You know what I mean. The Jurchens, the Khitans, the Tibetans. If you haven't seen my videos on those, well, go take a look at my recent Khitans video for starters. But I've done videos on all of these civilizations. Please don't make me sad by putting them into the game without them actually having a proper civilization. That would be such a bummer, to say the least. However, Zheng He doesn't have that problem. He didn't substantively interact with any of these civilizations that I have just listed, but also had an incredibly interesting jet-setting lifestyle. He was a famous admiral, explorer, and diplomat who traveled all over the oceans. He's an amazingly interesting, iconic character who played a major role in the Chinese military before his globe-trotting lifestyle took place. I'd say he's arguably the most important character within all of Ming Dynasty history, and he would have colossal civ variety. He went all the way through the Straits of Malacca, he went past India, he went all over the place, and it could really show off a lot of the different sides of the Chinese as a civilization, both his more proper military days and his later exploration days. In fact, I would say that a campaign featuring Zheng He would play very similarly to the Francisco de Almeida campaign, and gave the Chinese a better day in the sun, which they definitely deserve. Now, Zheng He, I think, is a bit of an oddball pick for the Chinese, but there's one pick that I don't think is oddball, and that being Harald Hardrada for the Vikings. Of course, if this is an East Asian-focused DLC, we won't have a Viking campaign. But goddammit, we should! There's plenty of other civilizations that don't have campaigns yet. In fact, I think there's, 5, 6 maybe? And the Vikings are among them. In fact, among my own community, they are one of the ones I most see people talking about as wanting a campaign for. Harald is a badass. I talked about him in my Norwegians video. Go take a look up there if you haven't seen it yet. He had a ridiculously interesting life that saw him travel all over Europe, down into the Mediterranean, then back up, reclaimed his throne, attacked England. Geez, this guy just got up to all kinds of shit. And like Zheng He, he would have unbelievable civilization variety, which is a very good thing for the Vikings, given that they're off clustered in their own little corner. His hero unit has also been in the game since, I believe, Age of Conquerors, and is unbelievably unique. You know that berserk who's like juiced up on super speed and then runs around and chucks axes at people? It's really fun to use as a hero unit. He was certainly my favorite as a kid playing around with the scenario editor, and I believe he is still a fan favorite as a hero unit, so that seems like a perfect candidate for someone to make a campaign about. And on top of all that, he already appears prominently in a classic scenario that only tells a piece of his story in the William the Conqueror scenario. And like we've seen before, I think it would be a great lead-in for a more thorough and proper campaign that really explores the substantial ups and downs of this wild man's wild life. Now, those are the three big ones, but there's a couple others I want to mention as well. First being Aetius, Flavius Aetius. If you don't know him, he was the Roman general who primarily opposed Attila the Hun. And the Romans, I would say, are a fantastic candidate for receiving a campaign. Now, why? First of all, it would let people play them without buying the silly, overpriced Return to Rome DLC, but also, I think it would help people warm up to the civilization. From what I've seen and heard, people are still not super thrilled with the Romans in AoE2. They don't love how they've been implemented, they don't love how they are paywalled, and so this seems like a good way of giving people another option, you know what I mean? Additionally, Aetius is already adjacently featured, kind of like Hideyoshi. You don't see him named in Attila the Hun, the campaign, except maybe in the intro text or something like that, but you certainly fight against him, even if he's just represented by a more generic Romans. And so being able to play the other side of the Attila campaign is something we've seen done before, and I think would be exceptionally interesting. Additionally, Aetius is just an extremely interesting person himself. He was, in my opinion, Rome's last great hero, though Stilicho is up there, and I think he would make for a perfect campaign protagonist for Rome, given his opposition to Attila, though again, if you went with Stilicho, I wouldn't be that sad. Beyond Aetius, there are two more bigger long shots, I would say, one being Belisarius. He was the Byzantine Emperor Justinian's right-hand man, fought against the Persians and the Vandals and others, even almost reclaimed Rome by himself, arguably. And so he's an incredibly interesting and successful historical figure, but more than that, the Byzantines deserve another campaign. I don't actually hate Body. I actually kind of enjoy playing Body, but it doesn't feel right for the Byzantines' only campaign representation to be a fictional family. I don't have a problem with fictional campaigns, in fact I quite like many of them, but to have them be the one exception among the official campaigns just feels wrong to me. And I don't think you could find a better candidate to fulfill this niche than Belisarius. Not only did he have an exceptional story, decent civilization variety on top of that, though I do wish we had the Vandals. Take a look at my build for them there. I think that he could also lend himself to some incredibly in-depth and interesting scenarios, unlike much of what we have seen before, especially given the incredible give and take of the many campaigns that he was fighting and involved in simultaneously at various parts of his career. Lastly, Belisarius has once again been in the game since Age of Kings. He had a hero unit, still does I believe. It is admittedly a very underwhelming hero unit without even having a proper portrait, but he's been around. And so if you've been around since Age of Kings, it just makes it more likely that you get a campaign. That's what happened with Tamerlane after all. But Belisarius is not the only such Age of Kings present hero-style unit that deserves a campaign. I think that Alexander Nevsky falls into that bucket as well. I love this art, by the way. Look at this guy. Alexander Smash. Look at his shoulders. Anyways, the Slavs deserve another campaign. I don't think many people would contest that. I actually, again, kind of like the Vlad campaign. It's pretty fun to play, but you only really play the Slavs for part of it, and he should really be a Vlach campaign, which of course we don't have yet in the game, but we should. And while I mostly discussed Alexander in my Novgorodian video, go take a look at that up here, I would say that he is probably the most important figure in East Slavic history before the 1600s. Tomasz, if you want to disagree with me on that one, please do, but I'm making the claim. He's unbelievably iconic. Not having a campaign for him, an official campaign for him, is already kind of ridiculous. He would not only have great civilization variety and awesome scenario variety, but there's already a very good and popular custom campaign about him, meaning that the appetite is there. If they don't have an official version of this, they are missing out because people would play the hell out of that thing. And like I said, I do wish he'd be Novgorodian, but I'm not holding my breath. I don't think they're going to make that into a civilization probably ever, but if not ever, for a long-ass time. And again, he's been in the game since Age of Kings as a hero. He even had a cool, funky portrait with that big metal helmet. I remember clicking on him when I was younger and saying, "Who the hell is that?" I've never heard of this man in my life. What a missed opportunity. Let's teach people about this man. Let's give them a chance to play him in an official campaign. It's an obvious shoe-in slam dunk pick. And that's the end of my obvious shoe-in slam dunk picks, but I have a couple more guesses that I'd like to share with you guys that I'm not nearly as locked in on, but I still think are worth mentioning. A Korean campaign. I do think it will happen. I think it's very, very likely. The problem is I don't know a lot about Korean history personally, so I don't feel comfortable making a guess. Same with Turks and Mayans, but they seem less likely to me than the Koreans. The Koreans feel like they are a huge gaping missing hole in the game right now, given that I think they only ever appear once in the Admiral Yi scenario. I also think a Celts campaign is distinctly possible. I don't think it's necessarily what they will do with this campaign DLC, but if this one succeeds, I think they will do it in the future. The tutorial is, in my opinion, completely insufficient for showing them off as a civilization, though it's iconic and we don't want to remove it, right? But having a second campaign maybe featuring probably Brian Boru or Robert the Bruce would be very welcome. And those are my two best guesses for who would be added if this were to happen. Unfortunately, they really don't have great civilization variety, which is probably the biggest problem with a Celt campaign of any kind, but I still do think it is possible, especially Robert the Bruce, the more I think about it. I think he would have slightly more civilization variety. Another guess that I have, I think the cost of this DLC will be $10, and I will be annoyed. Reason being is I don't think it will be worth $10. Maybe if there's like, I don't know, 6 campaigns seems reasonable for $10, and maybe if they like really start to push the boundaries with their design, then maybe it could be worth 10. But assuming they just put out 3 campaigns, which is what they've been doing, then I genuinely think pricing it higher than 5 has a good chance of ruining this excellent idea. I've been pulling for DLC campaigns for well over a year now, and I've been saying this is something they should be doing. There's so many amazing mappers out there. You commission them to make some beautiful official work that you get all the voice acting and the beautiful art for, and it will be a slam frickin' dunk. If you don't, scalp people, and I think that $10 is scalping territory. Now, I might be wrong. Maybe they'll price it $7.50. That would be more reasonable. But I think if they go to 10, I think that has a real good chance of sinking this idea and putting the community's backs up to ever having them do it again, which would be a serious shame because I think there is serious potential with this idea. And like I said, if there's only 3 campaigns, but they're really interesting, maybe they're long ones and do some like boundary pushing, completely new stuff like a leveling system for a hero or like a co-op only campaign or branching paths or something like that. That could be a way to justify $10. My gut tells me they're not going to do that. Please prove me wrong, Microsoft. I would love nothing more than be wrong about this. And lastly, to round it out with some other guesses, the thing that they're announcing in, what is it, like 2 weeks or something like that, it won't just be talking about this DLC campaign thing. There's a couple other things on the docket, but before we get to those, just as a little random guess here, I am guessing that the thing I said earlier about being annoyed about them representing a civilization that really should have its own civilization as something like the Mongols, I think that will happen once in this DLC pack. I think at least one civ that should be in the game will be shoehorned in as the Mongols, and I think it will probably be the Jurchens, if I had to guess. Someone is going to get the shaft. Could be any of the 4 on screen right now, maybe some more I'm not even thinking of. And I do think it will be the Mongols that end up being the placeholder. But beyond just Age of Empires 2, They're saying that they're going to do some Age of Mythology announcement stuff, revealing some myth units. I don't think Age of Mythology is going to have a new culture revealed. My guess is that they're going to release the game without any new cultures and that they're going to offer them as DLCs. But I do think they're going to add more stuff to existing civilizations. Kind of like that one, I think it was a mod way back in the day that gave like an archer to the Norse and some other weird stuff. I think they're going to do something like that and mostly focus it on trying to fix the Chinese, because the Chinese really blow, and it's a shame seeing how like poor they are in comparison to all the other civilization designs. And so I think they're going to try to add some new stuff to the Chinese, and that's the bulk of what they are going to reveal. Along these same lines, it would make sense for like some Chinese revamps to be paired with like an East Asian themed Age of Empires 2 DLC, so maybe there is a link there. The last of my guesses is that the mobile game, which they will be revealing more of, I believe, during this announcement, is going to look cheap and derivative, especially when they're trying to slap a new coat of gacha paint over a beloved franchise. I don't think they're going to be making many friends with the mobile game reveals, and I think it will end up being something that just exploits the East Asian markets without really having much of an impact anywhere else, and is quite possibly just going to be outright hated. Shocker. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, though. I've been proven wrong plenty of times before. And that's the sum total of my guesses. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. What are your guesses for what this upcoming revealer will be? Do you have any thoughts specifically on the campaign DLC thing and what that might hold? What campaigns do you think will feature? How did you like my guesses? I would love to hear thoughts from you down in the comment section. And once again, please be sure to go and check out Enclave. It's something I've been putting a lot of time into recently, and I would be honored by your support. Again, sorry that I have been spotty as of late. I'm adjusting to my new schedule, and so I'm going to be trying to take as much time as I possibly can to do things like respond to comments and talk with all of you as per usual. But if it is touch and go, I sincerely apologize and hope I can get back to being a little more regular down the line. But until then, my name is Robby Howell. And ciao for now.